I never thought I'd be writing something like this online, but here I am. Maybe it's therapy, maybe it's desperation, or maybe I just need strangers to tell me I'm not crazy. Either way, here's my story. I met Daniel when I was 23. He wasn't the love at first sight type of guy, not the tall, dark, and mysterious stranger you'd expect in a romance novel. No, Daniel was steady, grounded. He had this smile that made you feel like everything was going to be okay, even when life was falling apart. At the time, I didn't want fireworks. I wanted safety, and that's what he offered. We dated for 2 years before we got married. The first years were good. Not perfect, I don't believe in perfect, but good. He made me laugh, he calmed my storms, he told me he loved me every single day. Or at least, he used to. Looking back, there were red flags. Times he worked late, but couldn't explain what project exactly kept him there. The occasional secretive texts he brushed off as just friends from college. I wanted to trust him, so I did. Maybe that was my biggest mistake. I trusted him more than he deserved. Fast forward to our 5th wedding anniversary. I wanted to do something big, something unforgettable. We'd always talked about Egypt, the pyramids, the desert, the history that stretches back thousands of years. So I booked us a 2-week guided tour. It wasn't cheap, but I thought, what better way to celebrate half a decade of marriage than by standing together in front of the Great Pyramid of Giza? Daniel seemed lukewarm about the idea. He said the heat would be unbearable, that he didn't really do history. But eventually he came around. I chalked it up to nerves or stress from work. I had no idea then that he had entirely different reasons for being hesitant. The trip started beautifully. The flight was long, but when we landed in Cairo, I felt like I was stepping into another world. The streets were alive in a way that's hard to put into words. Chaotic, noisy, colorful, overwhelming. Our guide Mahmoud gathered our small group of 15 tourists and explained the itinerary. Cairo, Giza, Luxor, Aswan. I was giddy with excitement, snapping photos of everything, even the street cats and chaotic traffic. Daniel, though, he seemed distracted. He was on his phone constantly, even though roaming charges were insane. He'd lag behind the group, pretending to admire some random detail, but I noticed he was usually texting. I asked him once who it was, and he brushed me off as just friends from college. I wanted to trust him, so I did. Maybe that was my biggest mistake. I trusted him more than he deserved. The evening after the tour, our group gathered for dinner at a local restaurant. That's when I first noticed her. Her name was Sophie. She was part of our group, traveling alone. Blonde, early 30s, the kind of woman who laughs loudly and draws attention without even trying. She sat next to Daniel that night, and I swear I saw his entire body language change. He leaned closer, cracked more jokes in an hour than he had with me in weeks, and when she laughed, he looked at her like she hung the moon. It stung, but I told myself I was being paranoid. Daniel was friendly, Sophie was friendly, and we were all just tired tourists bonding over food. That's all. But deep down, a voice inside me whispered, "Pay attention. Something isn't right." I should have listened sooner. The next few days in Egypt should have been everything I dreamed of. We visited Saqqara, with its step pyramid that looked like something out of another world. We cruised the Nile at sunset, watching the sky bleed into shades of orange and gold. We wandered through crowded bazaars where shopkeepers tried to lure us in with spices, perfumes, and glittering trinkets. And yet, I felt like I was watching it all through glass. Daniel was slipping further and further away from me, and I couldn't ignore it anymore. It wasn't just his phone, though that was bad enough. He'd angle the screen away when I walked by, sometimes stepping outside the hotel lobby to get better reception. He always had some excuse: emails, coworkers, urgent deadlines. But come on, we were in Egypt. Who works while staring at the pyramids? What made it worse was Sophie. She seemed to gravitate toward Daniel at every opportunity. On the bus rides, she always ended up sitting near him. During group meals, she'd laugh at his dumbest jokes, tossing her hair back like she was auditioning for some cliché rom-com. And Daniel, he soaked it up like a man dying of thirst. I tried to tell myself I was imagining it, that I was tired, jet-lagged, maybe even jealous for no reason. But the truth was written in the small moments. The way his eyes lingered at her when he thought I wasn't looking. The way he smiled differently with her, sharper, more alive, like he was 20 again. On the 5th day, our group went to see the Great Sphinx. Standing there in front of that massive stone creature, its nose long gone, its body scarred by centuries of wind and sand, I felt small, insignificant. And then I looked over and saw Daniel standing with Sophie, his hand brushing against hers in what looked far too natural to be an accident. My chest tightened. I wanted to scream, to confront them right there under the burning Egyptian sun. But instead, I froze. My mind raced with excuses. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe I misread it. Maybe I just didn't want the truth. That night, I barely slept. I stared at the ceiling of our hotel room while Daniel showered. His phone buzzed on the nightstand, and for the first time in my life, I thought about going through it. My hand even hovered over it, but something in me pulled back. I didn't want to be that person. I wanted to believe my marriage wasn't so fragile that I needed to spy. The universe, though, has a cruel way of forcing the truth on you. On the 7th day, our tour took us deep into the desert for a sunrise camel ride. It sounded romantic, couples watching the sun rise over golden dunes, the pyramids in the distance. I had envisioned holding Daniel's hand, sharing whispers in their early morning silence. Instead, I ended up riding alone, my camel trailing behind while Daniel and Sophie's animals somehow walked side by side. They laughed the whole way, silhouettes etched against the rising sun like some twisted painting. When we stopped for breakfast, I finally broke. I pulled Daniel aside, my voice low and shaking. "What's going on with you and Sophie?" He blinked, all wide-eyed innocence. "What are you talking about?" "You're always with her. You laugh with her, you sit with her, you act like I don't exist when she's around." Daniel sighed like I was the one exhausting him. "Babe, relax. She's just a friend. She's here alone. I feel bad for her. You're overthinking this." Overthinking. The word burned in my chest. Maybe he even believed it himself. But I saw the way he looked at her, and I knew friends don't make you forget your wife exists. I swallowed my anger, told myself I'd wait. I needed proof. Real proof. And oh, Egypt was going to give it to me. By the time we reached Luxor, I was living in a constant storm of suspicion. I tried to enjoy the Valley of the Kings, to lose myself in the hieroglyphs in the tombs, in the cool hush of the underground chambers. But every time I turned around, Daniel was there with Sophie, offering to take her photo, laughing at something whispered between them, standing a little too close. Our tour group had started to notice too. I caught one older woman shooting me a sympathetic look at dinner one night, like she knew something I didn't want to admit. I hated it. I hated feeling like a fool in front of strangers. Hated that Daniel's betrayal wasn't just private, it was public, unfolding in the shadow of temples older than memory. The breaking point came at Giza, back where it all began. We had a free afternoon, and some of us decided to explore the smaller pyramids nearby. I told Daniel I wanted to go to the bazaar to shop for souvenirs. He nodded absently, scrolling on his phone, and muttered, "Yeah, I'll catch up later." I should have left it there. But something inside me, call it intuition, call it survival, told me to follow. So I did. I trailed behind at a distance, weaving through tourists and hawkers selling postcards. Daniel didn't notice me. He was too focused on Sophie, who was waiting by a shaded corner of the Great Pyramid itself. My stomach dropped. They walked together toward a quieter stretch of the plateau, away from the main crowds. I kept to the shadows, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might echo against the ancient stones. And then I saw it. Daniel reached for her hand.
She didn't resist. He leaned in, whispered something that made her laugh, and then, under the same sun that had watched over pharaohs and empires, he kissed her. I froze. The world went silent except for the rush of blood in my ears. My husband, the man I had trusted with everything, was kissing another woman not 20 feet from where I stood. The pyramids towered behind them, indifferent, eternal, while my entire world cracked open. I don't know how long I stood there. Maybe seconds, maybe minutes. Eventually, I turned and walked back toward the hotel, every step heavy, like my body wasn't mine anymore. That evening, when Daniel came back, he acted like nothing happened. He kissed my cheek, asked if I'd found anything good at the bazaar. I stared at him, wondering how a man could lie so easily, how he could look me in the eye with her lipstick probably still on his lips. I didn't confront him. Not yet. I needed more than just my word against his. I needed undeniable proof, something he couldn't twist, something he couldn't gaslight me into doubting. So the next morning, I made a choice. I swapped my seat on the tour bus with another traveler, one who liked sitting near the back. From there, I had a perfect view of Daniel and Sophie a few rows ahead. I snapped photos when their hands touched, when they leaned too close, when his arm lingered on the back of her seat. Later, when we toured the Temple of Karnak, I caught them slipping away from the group. My heart hammered as I followed at a distance. They ducked behind a column and I caught them again, kissing, his hands roaming where they never should. I lifted my phone and pressed record. That was it. That was the moment everything shifted. I had proof. My marriage was over, though Daniel didn't know it yet. And standing there, among ruins that had survived thousands of years, I realized something chilling. Betrayal is its own kind of archaeology. You dig and dig, hoping to uncover beauty. But sometimes, all you find are bones.
I don't think I heard a word our guide said the next day. He was explaining the history of the pyramids of Khafre and Menkaure, his voice echoing in the dry desert air. But all I could think about was the video on my phone. My proof. My weapon. Daniel walked beside me like nothing was wrong. He asked if I was drinking enough water, if I remembered sunscreen. He even slipped his hand into mine at one point, like he was still my husband. I wanted to rip my hand away, but instead I held on. Not out of love, but because I wanted him comfortable. I wanted him unsuspecting. Because today, I was going to end it. After the official tour, we had some free time to wander the plateau. Tourists were scattered everywhere, taking photos, bargaining with camel drivers, squinting into the harsh sun. I pulled Daniel aside, just far enough from the group but still in view of everyone. "Let's sit," I said, pointing to a low stone wall near the pyramid of Khafre. He shrugged, followed me, sat down. For a moment, I just stared at him. The man I thought I'd spend my life with, the man I once loved so fiercely it scared me. And now, he was a stranger. Worse, he was the enemy. "Daniel?" I said quietly. "I know." He frowned. "Know what?" I took out my phone, opened the video, and pressed play. His face drained of color the moment Sophie's laughter echoed from the tiny speaker, followed by the unmistakable image of his hands on her body. He froze, mouth open. No words came out. The silence between us was heavier than the desert air. Finally, he stammered, "It's not what it looks like." I laughed, A sharp, broken sound that startled even me. Not what it looks like? Do you think I'm blind? Do you think I'm stupid? People had started to notice. A couple from our tour slowed their steps nearby, pretending to check their cameras while clearly listening. Daniel leaned closer, hissing, "Keep your voice down. Do you want to embarrass me in front of everyone?" "Oh," I said, my voice rising despite the lump in my throat. "Oh, you're worried about embarrassment. You weren't worried about that when you shoved your tongue down Sophie's throat behind a 4,000-year-old column." Heads turned. I saw Sophie in the distance, stiff as a statue, her eyes wide, lips pressed tight. Our entire group was watching now. Daniel reached for my hand, like he could still spin this, still charm his way out. "Please, we can talk about this later, in private." I pulled back, standing. My voice shook, but I forced the words out, each one like a blade. "No, Daniel, we're talking about it now. You betrayed me on our anniversary in Egypt in front of the pyramids, for God's sake. You didn't just destroy our marriage, you humiliated me in front of strangers and treated me like nothing." His face hardened. The mask slipped. "Fine. Maybe if you weren't so cold, I wouldn't have needed someone else." The words hit me like a slap, but strangely they also set me free. Because in that moment, I saw him for what he truly was. A coward, a liar, a man who would rather blame me than take responsibility. I lifted my phone high, voice steady now. "Everyone sees what kind of man you are, and when we get home, everyone else will too." And with that, I turned and walked away, leaving him sitting there in the shadow of the pyramids, small and pathetic against the backdrop of eternity. For the first time in days, I felt the desert wind on my face, cool and sharp, like it was cutting away everything rotten. The marriage was dead, but I was alive.
The bus ride back to Cairo was the longest of my life. The air inside felt heavy, charged with unspoken tension. Sophie sat alone, staring out the window, her face pale. Daniel sat in silence, 2 rows ahead, shoulders tense, pretending to scroll through his phone. Nobody said a word to him. Nobody had to. Everyone knew. When we finally got back to the hotel, I packed my suitcase in silence. Daniel tried to speak excuses, pleas, half-hearted apologies, but I ignored him. I wasn't going to let him twist the narrative. The evidence was in my phone, and the truth was burned into my memory. On the flight home, I requested a seat far from him. I stared out the window as the plane lifted off, the pyramids shrinking into the horizon. They had stood for thousands of years, weathering storms and wars and time itself. My marriage, meanwhile, had crumbled in less than 5. The contrast was almost poetic. When we landed, I didn't go home with him. I called a friend who picked me up from the airport. Daniel sent me a dozen texts that night. "Please don't do this. We can fix it. She means nothing." The audacity of it all almost made me laugh. She meant nothing, yet he had risked everything. The next weeks were chaos. I filed for divorce. My family, shocked at first, rallied around me. My mother wanted to scream at him, my brother wanted to punch him, but I told them not to waste their energy. Daniel wasn't worth it. He had already destroyed himself. Sophie? I heard she ghosted him completely once we got home. Whatever fantasy they had built in the desert crumbled in the harsh light of reality. He lost me, he lost her, and soon he lost the respect of everyone who had once believed he was a decent man. There were nights I cried until my chest ached, yes. There were mornings I woke up forgetting for a split second that my life had shattered, only for the pain to crash back over me. But there was also relief. A strange, steady relief, because now I knew the truth. I wasn't wasting another year, another ounce of love on someone who saw me as disposable. And that's what brings me here, to this post, writing it down, sharing it with strangers on the internet. Because sometimes the only way to heal is to let the story out of your body. I keep thinking about that moment at the pyramids, me standing in the shadow of a structure that had survived 4,500 years, Daniel, small and desperate, trying to explain away a betrayal that couldn't be explained. It reminded me of something our guide said the first day. The pyramids are proof that lies cannot last forever. Only truth stands the test of time. He probably meant it about history, but for me, it was about my marriage. Lies may glitter for a while, but eventually the sand shifts and the truth is uncovered. And when that happens, you only have two choices: bury yourself in denial or walk away and start over. I chose to walk away. So, here I am, divorced at 30, scarred but still standing, stronger maybe than I've ever been. Egypt gave me more than a heartbreak. It gave me clarity. And if anyone reading this is sitting there, doubting, making excuses for the red flags they see in their own life, don't. Pay attention. Don't wait until your world collapses in the shadow of a monument to realize you deserve more. Because sometimes the only way to honor yourself is to leave the ruins behind.